Real questions, real answers for real life. Come on in and pull up a chair. You're at 1850 Main Street with Michael DelGiorno and David Zanotti.
So what happens if voters ever catch on that there's a lot more to good government than the president running the country?
So when we talked last time, there wasn't a lot of hope in the room. I mean, this presidential election is a mind bender. And given the fact that there's a bunch of stuff we don't see coming, like one of the things we didn't throw in that last conversation was who trips on the stairs the worst? I mean, we've got two guys way past life expectancy if they're the nominees in Biden and Trump. So the question's going to be, who's going to be charting the daily trips and falls? How could it come down in the last hours to a gaffe? And I think it's important for people to understand. Go back to 2004 and the reelection attempt of George W. Bush, which he won, but he won by very small numbers, very small margins, after leading America in the response to 9/11. Now, that's unusual. Remember, his first election was won by 537 votes. Now let's fast forward to, and you have the anomaly of Barack Obama, because the anomaly of Barack Obama in his first election was this was all about race. This was all about electing a black president. This was all about white people and white guilt and the Andy Griffith factor and all of that. And the momentum that Obama drove was amazing. His reelection was the most amazing manifestation of ground level technology married to social media. And on top of that, the two people that they ran against him didn't really stand a chance. I mean, think about Barack Obama and Mitt Romney. All right. Could you stereotypically create a better cartoon character arrangement?
No.
Think about Barack Obama and John McCain. You've got a glib, young, incredibly winsome candidate with allegedly a decent jump shot against Casper the Ghost in John McCain, an old white guy with white hair. Just look at the setup on the imagery alone. And if you think looks don't matter and that the whole celebrity status of these campaigns, it doesn't matter, then you're not paying attention.
Well, history won't probably remember this properly, but all right. So Barack Obama goes beyond politics into national celebrity and fame.
Yes.
You might disagree with me. I think like only JFK and Martin Luther King Jr. before him. Period. End of story. Now, there's differences. I'm leaving off Ronald Reagan because not even Reagan in real time had that level of celebrity. I mean, we're talking JFK type fandom for Barack Obama, MLK type fandom for Barack Obama. Problem is he didn't have the gospel of Martin Luther King Jr.
Right.
He had a very questionable past and a very questionable gospel, but America fell for it. So yeah, he was, and then got the ultimate matchup. I mean, you put the ultimate charisma against, W doesn't survive if he doesn't get John Kerry. That helped him a lot. There is no Barack Obama or JFK or Ronald Reagan in this race.
So here's a reality piece that I think everybody who calls themselves conservative needs to come to terms with. Winning the Electoral College as a conservative Republican is a very difficult mathematical proposition right now. Everything has to break the right way for that Republican. Now, it can happen, and there's been great mercy extended to this country in the past, and the idea that Donald Trump wasn't Hillary Clinton, and where would the country be if Hillary Clinton had been elected? It's a terrifying thought in regards to public policy. So what do we do if we buy into the idea that the presidency is reality and that that's all that we're dealing with here? Then it's a very grim proposition. If, however, we reawaken to the idea that we actually have a Congress that has tremendous ability to counteract the administrative state, then maybe things aren't quite as bad as we think. Because if, in fact, you had more conservative people running the House and the Senate, now the president has a challenge. And you've pointed out over and over again in these conversations that some of the best days of civil governance in our lifetimes have been when you've had a president who's got to deal with an opposing Congress to get anything done. That's actually not a bad balancing point. Problem is, these Senate races are difficult. They're all home rule races. People think that there's a national trend. I'm telling you, Michael, it drives me crazy. Politics for my entire lifetime. And I don't know. I mean, how many elections have I seen since 1976?
Don't say it out loud because
It's a long time.
I go back to Nixon,
Right?
and I feel
it's
old.
a long time. And what's amazing is everybody gets the Senate wrong. Everybody in the media gets the Senate wrong because Senate races are unique to the states. Every state has their own way of sending someone to the Senate. And it's a different formula. It's different the way Tennessee elects senators from the way that Ohio elects senators. It's different from the way Florida elects senators, the way Colorado elects senators. These are home games, man. And it's like a college rivalry. You can have a huge college rivalry. But I mean, let's take Michigan, Ohio State, just for one example. Or what's the best one? Who's Oklahoma's biggest rival?
Well, it used to be Nebraska. It's always been Texas.
Okay, so you take Oklahoma, Texas. You could have Texas ranked 2 in the country and Oklahoma ranked 16th. But those things are all off on the day they play each other, right?
Right. Anything can happen.
Because it's a whole different game. That's the way to think about the Senate.
I always put it this way, and I don't know if this is the best. Like if you and I right now, I would guess that most people overhearing this conversation, or most people we bump into in everyday life, are focused on the presidential race. You'll never even hear them bring up Senate races or the control of the Senate, the House. And I would say to you, if I could cut a deal right now with the future, not the devil, the future, I really don't care who the next president is if I knew that true statesmen and stateswomen, conservatives who see the trajectory that we're on that must be reversed and the things that we must do for the good of the people and the security of the people for our time and for all time, because I can't just assume if Republicans are in control, that's a solution. But real statesmen and stateswomen got control of the Senate and the House and let the Podestas and the Soroses have the White House. I would take that deal.
Yeah.
I don't know that most Americans would. That's because they don't understand how our founding fathers set this up. The other thing I would state that is crystal clear to me, when we saw the Tea Party movement go across the country, it changed a lot of House seats. Just like somebody local in a very small district, because we both worked on campaigns, winning a House of Representatives is a small territory to canvass.
Yeah.
Become a United States senator, it's statewide. Yeah. It's as hard as winning a presidency almost. So, but you see like the Tea Party influence change the makeup of Congress, especially within a party. You saw it have no effect on the United States Senate. Yeah. To your point, the Senate is a different animal. That's everything about this conversation. We just don't move forward in this conversation until everybody's on the same page. The Club of 100, running a campaign to be a United States Senator and becoming a United States Senator is a completely different animal. And it's not influenced by news cycles. It's not influenced by insight. You've got to go to every state and know the grassroots players, because it's all predetermined almost before it starts.
Yeah, everyone is different, and it's a challenge. Now you say, well, that's so frustrating. If the presidency is controlling the administrative state, and that's gone completely left, and the only hope is to get a better representation of our constitutional republic in the Senate. And I live in a state where, it's not even an issue. Like if I live in Illinois, people will write us and call me and say, like, I live in Illinois, what in the world can I do? And one of the things I say is, well, okay, what do you know about Ohio? What do you know about Montana? What do you know about Arizona? Who do you know about who's running there? Is there a race somewhere where you can get involved and you can make a difference, where you can pray for the people that are running there? You can find out how you can help. You can give money to candidates. You're not restricted. I mean, a Senate vote's a Senate vote. It doesn't matter whether it's coming from Alaska, Hawaii, or Maine. It doesn't matter. A Senate vote is a Senate vote.
And it might feel like, oh, well, that doesn't make any sense to me. Listen, the United States Senate doesn't act the way the founding fathers wanted them to act. They're not there to protect your state's rights in your state. They're a club of 100 that think they're really running the country. Therefore, every senator is your senator.
Yeah, that's exactly
And you might
true.
want to get involved in it.
But
it's interesting because I wondered if you read the same thing I did, which is, and this is rare lately, The Hill did a great article. and they looked at the 5 seats most likely to flip. And what it does is it gets you focused on those states. It identifies them: West Virginia, Montana, Ohio, one that you're very familiar with. And then once it looks at them and it's telling you why they might flip, it's getting into very much what's happening on the ground in that state, which is everything you've been saying, because you can't understand these races unless you're focused first and foremost on that. And then they threw in Arizona and Pennsylvania, because those are the ones that could flip the control of the Senate on election night. That's what creates the result that you're going to react to. But if we understood the process and we were involved in taking the right meaningful actions now, you won't be reacting, you'll be creating what happens on election night.
When you subscribe to 1850 Main Street, you're the first to find out what's happening next with new guests, publications, and events. And when you spread the word about 1850 Main Street, you're helping others find real answers to the real questions facing America right now. To learn more, visit 1850mainstreet.com. And please, tell a friend.
So let's take a look at these 5 races and what the Hill was talking about. Now, I'm going to tell you that I'm not optimistic about what they wrote about. What do you see?
I don't know how you are. The first thing I am, first of all, I'm very skeptical anytime I'm reading something the media is doing, because I always feel like, okay, somebody's trying to manipulate everybody, so they're trying to manipulate me. So in other words, the first thing I do is throw up a wall,
right,
and I'm dissecting it to make sure I'm not being had. So you're suspicious, number one. Number two, they're clearly coming from their thesis. And so what people don't do when they're reading is stop and go, wait, do I buy this thesis? Number one. So I was just kind of thrown. I like the thesis. I don't know if I like the details, was kind of my reaction as I was reading. So it was almost like, I can't wait to see David sit at the 1850 table and take these one at a time and see how reasonable they are.
Well, let's start with West Virginia. Whatever Manchin wants, he gets. End of conversation. The idea that Manchin's going to get beat is only going to happen. I know he's running against a popular governor and people are fed up and all that sort of stuff, but he is still the heavyweight champion in West Virginia. So he's got to mess it up to lose. So either a third-party candidate's got to drain him out, or in a head-on-head match, I'm saying it's tough to dump an incumbent senator. I'm thinking Manchin wins no matter which way.
All right, and here's the bottom line. Whether it's Ohio or Tennessee, you're living an armchair quarterback, it really doesn't matter. What do people living in West Virginia think of Manchin? I said on election night, after they pulled that steal 2 Senate seats in Georgia as a coup de grace to an already crazy election cycle, I said, well, Joe Manchin just became the most powerful person in America.
Yeah.
And he did. All right, so now we've been watching him and how he's been riding that fence, because he is the what's the movie you love where the guy gets the final say, a swing vote or whatever it was? Do people in West Virginia, do they want to be more left? Do they want to be more right? Do they want to stay centrist? Do they feel like with the spotlight on him, he did that? Because unless the voters of West Virginia think, we don't like somebody like Joe Manchin having so much national power, I doubt that. I'm sure they love it. Secondly, I think they're centrists, and he comes out as a proven centrist.
And he's the champ.
I think
Boxing
I'm
illustration.
with you, not the article.
The governor's got the governor's got to knock him out. Okay, Montana. Everybody looks at Tester and says, he's been there too long. Montana's a conservative state. Is it? With all the people that have moved into Montana from other states, is Montana still a conservative state? Then how come they got Tester there? So who's going to beat him? And how are they going to pull that off? Montana is completely unique in its own on-the-ground election realities.
Oh,
Are the people ready to throw Tester out?
I'm wearing a Browns hat. You grew up in Ohio. Let's do Ohio.
That's simple. Nobody's going to beat Sherrod Brown. You can't beat somebody with nobody. And Sherrod Brown is the reigning champ, and he's the U.S. Senator. Give me a reason to throw him out. Now, I've got plenty of reasons personally. I won't vote for him. But I'm telling you right now, he's a formidable campaigner. He only exists in people's minds once every 6 years. He hides the other 5.5 years. He comes out, runs lovely campaigns, is the nicest guy in the world, runs the most compassionate commercials, and the name Brown in Ohio is the number one political asset. And they're going to run people who nobody knows against somebody that everybody knows for at least 3 weeks every 6 years. Now, how do you beat that?
You always use the line, the guy with Air Force One has a huge advantage. In our last conversation, I could
Biggest plane wins.
Biggest plane wins. Joe Biden had $71 million of fundraising in the third quarter. They don't lack money for their incumbent president. To your point with Senator Brown in a statewide election with his name, won by 6%, 7% in his previous 2 elections. He just put $5.8 million third quarter in his bank account as well. He is the incumbent and he's got the money, and nobody really has a problem with him inside the state.
If the presidential election has coattails, then it's possible. If whoever the Republican nominee is, it's possible that Brown could get swept in that situation. The irony is the Democrats, however, if they know there's any risk at losing the presidency, they quadruple down in making sure they control the Senate. So if it actually looks like the Republicans are going to win at the White House, the Democrats will plow infinite amount of resources into Ohio to protect the Senate, where Republicans so focus on the top of the ticket that and here's the thing, you can't beat somebody with nobody.
Don't they kind of have the same problem the Republicans have right now? They need to clear out. When in a Senate race and deals are cut, grass tops deals, the money, they'd be better not trying to figure out, well, do we want LaRose? Do we want Dolan? Do we want Marino? They should be having their main choice and be selling that main choice and branding that main choice right now. I think having a long primary process on the Republican side will really hurt them.
Yeah, and coattails is the only way they win in Ohio. So, all right, so now we go to Arizona. There's one.
Arizona, fascinating.
Yeah, there's one where I think you've got a genuine toss-up situation going on because you got a lot of chaos in Arizona, right? I mean, you've got Kristen Sinema, you've got Lake, and then you've got an independent, right? You've got a third party already shaping up in Arizona. So who knows? And Sinema, of course, is declared independent. What is that? Is that good or is that bad? And so you've got a Democrat pulling on her vote count. You've got Lake, but then Lake's mired. Can her Lake point to a 2.0? Can she reimage herself so that she's not simply a narrow Trump-based only candidate in Arizona? That one's a mystery.
Well, if you like mysteries, you're going to love Pennsylvania to wrap up the conversation.
Yeah. So
each one of these, I still think that the point of all this is, we had a conversation recently about all the things that we don't know that could happen that would be very influential. That can happen in each one of these states. The premise of these are not national conversations. These are on the ground in the state with history conversations, but they're all going to play out. Now, the Hill says these are 5 seats that are really up for grabs and really look good for the Republicans. I don't agree with that at all, obviously. But this is what the makeup of the United States Senate is going to be. And it's so much more difficult than a presidential race or certainly even control of the House. And I don't think you and I will know until that night. And some of them are so razor thin. Yeah. Who on earth
Pennsylvania
from their ivory tower could begin to predict?
Pennsylvania might be the most fascinating one but the only people who are qualified to actually add into the conversation, other than their rights to free speech, anybody can say whatever they want, but the people who really might have some depth of understanding is you have to ask them this question. So who is Robert Casey the First? Tell me about the father. Well, Casey was a name in Pennsylvania that was identified as a moderate pro-life Democrat. Republicans loved Casey the father, who they elected to the Senate multiple times. This is Casey the son, who they're electing to the Senate multiple times because they're comfortable with the name, they're comfortable with the family, they're comfortable with the tradition that this person is kind of not a radical leftist. This is not where the Casey name comes from. Now, how he votes today, the son, Robert Casey, senator, is very different from where the father would have voted by a mile. But this is a name that Pennsylvania trusts. I mean, it's how many potato chip and pretzel companies come out of Pennsylvania? All right. This is kind of the feeling that you have for the Casey name. So it's a very localized race. Now, is it a winnable race? Here's the thing nobody wants to talk about out loud. Do Pennsylvanians feel guilty about electing a guy who wears shorts and a hoodie to the floor of the Senate? Do they regret the Fetterman decision?
But even if they do, David, I think you don't have, I mean, first of all, you just did a great job explaining what the Casey name means, where the vote matters in Pennsylvania. He's got a 6-point lead. He's got a bunch of money. They don't strike me as the Toomey, Rick Santorum state anymore. I think that's a very interesting thing. The problem is when you look at Casey, he's nothing like Fetterman. So I don't know that.
So will there be a counterbalance? If the Republican comes in who's popular and is conversant, will Casey actually get hurt by Fetterman? Will the people of Pennsylvania say, we've got to balance out this scale because, man, we really messed up on this last one. We're the laughing stock of the nation. Maybe what we better do now is we better put a Republican in to protect ourselves and our reputation in the country.
Well, you need 6 points, and you need them in a hurry.
Well, there's time on a Senate race.
Yeah.
There's time on a Senate race. And it does look like they've got somebody who's got the capacity. But that might be the undercard that no one sees coming. That might actually be one of the surprises. But the other ones at this stage in the game, you got 6, maybe Arizona, maybe Pennsylvania. But one thing to remember is it's only going to take the change of 1 or 2 seats to dynamically change what's happening in the U.S. Senate.
And the influence at the top of the ticket, in other words, one of the biggest uncertainty is on both sides, quite frankly, because there are some that don't believe Joe Biden's still going to be the nominee. I mean, it could change to Gavin Newsom. We don't know on the Republican side. But even if we were to buy the false choice, it's going to be Biden versus Trump. How does that influence these Senate races underneath?
And that's the question. What's the coattail capacity? If it's someone new at the top of the Republican ticket, does that play better in Pennsylvania? If it's Trump, and again, we don't know what we don't know about what's coming. We don't know what's coming in regards to all these hearings and all the plays that are going to happen. There's so much we don't know. But one thing we do know is that it's tough to beat a seated U.S. senator. And people that are telling you, oh, it's this, it's that, you know what? I'm not buying it.
It just doesn't happen very often.
Now, to beat the champ, you got to knock him out.
You know what I've learned? Don't trust anybody that discussing a topic like this is certain they know what's going to happen. That's the one to stop listening to.
The conversations are just getting started. To get connected, check out 1850mainstreet.com. We don't data mine anyone or sell your information. Subscribe today so you don't miss a single conversation. We'll see you next time here at 1850 Main Street.